Dante Cremasco. I've been with Downer now for 23 years. I run the national roads business here within Australia. I want to share a story first up around a bit of weekend activity that I got to partake in, and I was fortunate enough to witness a partial rebirth of the entertainment industry and witness a live concert by Midnight Oil at Rutherglen. Now, for those that aren't aware, Midnight Oil started in 1972 as The Farm, soon renamed in 76. Peter Garrett has been on the bandwagon for a long, long time, both politically and environmentally. And even on Sunday night, he was lamenting the fact that we're not doing enough. Doesn't mean he's going to stop, but I guess I was sitting there in the audience and thinking about what we've done, not just as a community, but as a business, to address some of the issues that have been on the forefront of our minds. And I'm sure you've sat through this morning already, very much experienced a lot of the change that Downer's going through. And with my presentation, I want to lead you down the path of not just the assets we maintain, but the assets that we have built, the positions that we keep, the positions that we are in, to ensure that Peter Garrett won't be lamenting anymore. So I'll start with a quick photo. Anyone recognise where we are on the screen? It's here in Sydney. You almost have city views in the distance. You're somewhere in the west. If you're thinking Rose Hill, fantastic infill opportunity at the old Viva refinery or Shell refinery. We're at Clyde. And that's not a facility that we maintain. What you're looking at is a facility that we've just built. Now that facility will soon come online in the next few weeks. What you're seeing in the middle is a big grey shed that houses virgin aggregates. We won't be requiring any loaders to load those aggregates into our plant. To the right, you see a wash plant, a repurposing plant that's capable of diverting all of the street sweepings off our roads around Sydney and putting them back into our products that we manufacture and make from a low-cost perspective. To the left, I've got the drone sitting at about 40 metres now. You can see a rather large industrial-looking building. It's an asphalt plant. It's capable of producing 100% recycled product, and I'll go into why that's important a little bit later. But just in front of you, it's not a fancy gazebo. It's not something that I've left the roof off. It's in construction. It's the first of its kind in Australia, and it's a place where we're plugged into the grid and we'll be screening and manufacturing our own reclaimed asphalt pavement at our site, at our 8-hectare site at the centre of Sydney, that will service the generations of road users to come. And I'm sure you've all, for those that are Sydney-based, experienced some pretty poor conditions on our networks at the moment with potholes, and that maintenance burden isn't going away, and we're going to be challenged to get better outputs from what we do to service our road users. So the business profile, I guess ultimately we are a leading supplier of integrated sustainable road network solutions. We're a road network manager. We operate in the asset management space. We provide services so that when we are the network manager, we can recommend not just the lowest cost solution, but by virtue of the fact of our asset management and our R&D, the best possible long-term solution to get the most out of the road networks that we manage. As you can see down below, we are quite a substantial part of the manufacturing capability in Australia of, for example, asphalt, which the majority of our built-up urban and large collector road networks operate and which our cars travel on. We manufacture in excess of 3 million tonnes per annum, which is a healthy proportion of the Australian market. In doing so, we are very proud in how much we are able to divert existing pavements into repurposed pavements and reduce that burden as we go forward. On the right-hand side, you'll see that we talk about sustainable road resources centres. Now, since I last spoke to you a year ago, we are now in the process of officially opening the one in Brisbane, where we sit on our own significant land parcel, very close to the Brisbane CBD, to again service very similar to what you've seen with the Rose Hill Devon Street development, and I'll talk about that in a case study in a moment. Our strategic footprint is one that leverages the proximity to the markets in which we operate, to the communities in which we are part of. As mentioned, we are very heavily engaged now in the reuse of existing assets that belong to our customers, and some $135 million has been invested in this space in the type of technical and industrial equipment that we need, including purchasing land to be Johnny on the spot when it comes to servicing those customers on a low carbon basis footprint. We've had opportunity to look at bolt-on acquisitions, but more importantly, we're in every major jurisdiction around Australia and stand ready to answer the call from a low carbon perspective. We talk about relationships creating success, and you would have heard Michael mention that we have had a bolt-on acquisition by the name of Fowler's Asphalting several months ago now. What a lot of people don't probably recognise is that this was a buyback some years later. In 2009, we had a very small, very poor condition, needing to be replaced asphalt plant in the Gippsland area. And we just had lots of work to do in other jurisdictions. And we didn't have crews, we didn't have people, we weren't in that market. And the owners of Fowler's approached us and wanted to know whether we would be keen to somehow strike up an accord going forward. We recognised pretty quickly that whenever you're not in those communities, then it's really going to be difficult. So rather than trying something together, we said, look, I think our asset will be better in your hands. I think you've got a better feel for what's happening in this community right now. But we want to support you on that journey, and we want to live our relationships creating success. And when you're ready to pass on the business, to work a little bit differently, then we want to make sure that we're the first people you talk to. And that happened a few years ago, pre-COVID. Obviously, COVID put the brakes on a lot of that. But Fowler's today represent a significant proportion of the eastern part of Victoria. It's a business that they've managed to rebuild very comprehensively. You're looking at a German Benninghoven plant in front of you that they've retooled. They have huge market share in that area. They've got lots of passionate people that live and service both the agricultural and the communities that exist out there from an energy perspective or tourism. And it's a great place to be. And importantly, our relationships with the people at Fowler's over the last 13 odd years in being their supply chain partner, in supplying both R&D and materials, has put us in the right spot to continue that journey. And hats off to the people at Fowler's that are continuing on that journey today. They're doing a great job and really making us very proud about that very relationship going forward. But what's going to keep us going? What's going to make the difference? There are lots of people playing in that space. You've often heard the road side, and what happens in that space is very highly commoditised. There are no differentiators. But we know there are boom markets, Western Melbourne, Western Sydney. You've heard about the Olympics in Brisbane going to a net carbon zero. You've seen a little bit about opportunistic bolt-ons. But ultimately, what we will do then is turn those opportunities through our IP, through the smart people that we have driving those low carbon initiatives by increasing our utilisation, reducing our waste and turning them into ultimately game changers. Our roadmap to do that is pretty complex. There are lots of steps along that, but it all comes together when you move from left to right, underpinned by a bent towards recycling, a bent towards lower carbon, turning our customers into our supply chain. Our customers own massive networks of materials, and they're called roads. And these roads are infinitely recyclable. They can be repurposed, they can be reused. They're even capable of being changed insofar as traditionally you've seen this industry operate and manufacture asphalts at high temperatures, 170, 180 degrees. Now we can't continue to do that. Our R&D and our intellectual property around where we're working today will mean that we will trend towards ambient temperatures in what we do. We will reduce our Scope 1 emissions to ensure that as time goes on, where we invest will be more and more carbon neutral, trending to negative. So I mentioned Brendale. This is up in Brisbane. We have a 9-hectare site up there that we've purchased a few years ago now. The plant in front of you is a sister plant to what we're just finishing now here in Sydney. The colour's a little bit different because EPA has views on what colour should be in Sydney, so we're happy to toe the line there. But ultimately you can see stockpiles of recycled asphalt pavement in the background, large bituminous tank farms, a huge R&D facility that allows us to specify new materials, and also the wash plant, very similar to what we're doing here in Sydney, and also what I'll talk about in a few moments with respect to Melbourne as well. Closed loop solutions, lower cost of production. Our customers are becoming our suppliers. Local government, state government, they're surely but slowly changing to ensuring that the products that get to the end of life on their networks, on their roads, will come back to places like you see in front of you to be repurposed at a lower cost and sent back out there to have another go under this harsh Australian climate. From an economic standpoint, the market's large. We estimate there's somewhere between 10 to 12 million tonnes, depending on projects that are laid in the asphalt space per annum. Local government has been a very big friend of ours, pushing the recycled content very, very strongly. They seem to think they have a lower risk appetite or about the type of networks and the types of vehicles that are on their networks. But what we're seeing more and more is state governments are now responding and are also getting on and specifying high recycled content and different types of products in the road surfaces that we're out there maintaining. You can also see that it does lend itself very heavily to carbon reduction. Recalling that the two plants that we've just finished in both Brisbane and Sydney are capable of doing 100% recycle at current temperatures. A lot of our plants will be able to do 100% recycle at lower temperatures. So the key here is on R&D, but the graph shows you that as you increase recycled content, if you can minimise the logistics requirements of where that material comes back and gets repurposed and gets reused, sorted, graded and remixed and sent back out there, that's where the real savings are. We're reducing our virgin materials, we're reducing our price exposure. We've all been at the Bowser, we can see what's happening. Our bitumen, the glue that holds our roads together, is inextricably linked to hydrocarbons, to our fuel prices. So every time a customer puts a new piece of road out there, they pay in today's dollars. When we go to recycle it in 15 to 20 years' time, we're getting the value of tomorrow's dollars to be repurposed and offsetting our costs of today. It's a cost driver, it's a carbon reducer, and you can just see what the capabilities of around the 30%, if industry can get to 30%. We're well and truly capable of doing that. We need good discussions with our clients around enabling those sorts of changes to specifications, but we're seeing the slow and steady march towards it. So how do we market ourselves? I mentioned that state governments are changing. This is a case study in Victoria where the State Government Road Authority has specified a high recycled content asphalt mix. We market our recycled content asphalt mixes is Reconophalt. There are lots of opportunities within Reconophalt to use a wide suite of 100% perpetually, infinitely recyclable products that can be taken back off the road network to our facilities that we own, operate, repurposed and sent back out there. And it makes huge differences to what we do from a community perspective. Repurpose It, our joint venture that you heard me mention last year, has also well and truly gone into the FOGO space, also recycling the green waste, and that gives us opportunities with respect to different energy sources and how we play in built-up urban environments as well from a green space perspective as well. Now, along this whole process, you'll see Repurpose It, it very much acts like a quarry, but the 70 hectares or the 210 acres of land that it manages throughout 3 locations in Victoria become very much borrow pits, temporary storage, places for us to temporarily stockpile materials, to understand their value, to treat them, to wash them, to recrush them, to send them back out to market. And in doing so, we again reiterate the simple point that our customers are becoming our suppliers. And when your customers become your suppliers, you start moving away from carbon because it's the very nature of the materials that they no longer have a use for, that they need to replace, that they need to ensure that their travelling public are kept safe, that those very products that we can take and inset. So you'll hear a lot about offsetting, you'll hear a lot about carbon reduction, but we think we've set up a business today that is ready to be starting the carbon insetting journey. One whereby we will have lower carbon-based inputs from our supply chain, which happens to also be our customers that require those very products. So looking forward to taking some questions a little bit later on, but there's a quick whip around what we do in the road space here in Australia. Thank you for your attention.